Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Latimore-Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. We are continuing our reflections on the life of an icon, Dr. Margaret Taylor Goss Burroughs. We have some of her friends, her intimate personal relationships. We want to give a living continuity to her life, which we know will continue on through each of us. And we have with us today Professor Timuel Black, who is an author, a scholar, a longtime friend of Dr. Margaret Burroughs. Debra Hand, who is the child, the art child, I would say, of Dr. Margaret Burroughs. Daniel Texador Parker, who is author and a very close friend of Dr. Burroughs. Eleanor Chatman, who not only was a close friend, but a fellow traveler with Dr. Margaret Burroughs. And I should give her her proper title. She is president of Africa Travel Advisors, and I have traveled with her and with Dr. Burroughs to Africa, my very first trip. And Dr. Jerome Lee, doctor of ophthalmology, who traveled with Dr. Burroughs. I don't know if this was his first trip to Africa, but he was on the same trip that I was on with Dr. Burroughs. And I did believe that Dr. Burroughs could keep that plane in the air, which is why I was on it. And of course, the Reverend Dr. Helen Sinclair, who's affectionately known as Queen Mother. Queen Mother Sinclair, for many, many years, was Dr. Burroughs' partner in going to the various correctional institutions to serve the needs of family and friends who are incarcerated there.
Right.
And these are the people who have gathered here today to share their reflections on the life of this icon. And we will begin with Debra Hand, who has just made a presentation to the DuSable Museum and to the Southside Community Arts Center, both of which were co-founded by Dr. Margaret Taylor Goss Burroughs. And we'd like for her to make her opening statement, followed by Timuel Black.
First of all, I'd just like to thank Diane Carr for allowing us to use her beautiful home to talk about Dr. Burroughs. And the reason why I'm so happy to be in the home of Diane Carr is because, as you can see, we're surrounded by beautiful artwork. And this artwork was created by people who share our cultural experience, although it could be appreciated by anybody. But I think that it really helps to lay out what Dr. Burroughs' legacy was about, because she was certainly about helping us to see ourselves in the glory that we deserve and to help us understand our value as a cultural group. And so to be in this home surrounded by the creativity of our beautiful culture for the world to see, first of all, it dispels the idea that African Americans are all out shooting up each other and and up to no good, when in fact there are many, many more collectors exactly like Diane and Louis Carr, who live with the beauty of who we are every day. And that's what Dr. Burroughs would want. She wants us to exalt our culture and hold our beauty up for the world to see. And particularly, she loved doing it through the arts. But I'll say very briefly that Dr. Burroughs discovered me as an artist. She came to my mother's home to look at my work, to encourage me. But that was right out of the gate. I was just creating art as a hobby. She discovered me, and she arranged for my first gallery presentation. She arranged for my first public unveiling. She arranged for my first museum acquisition. She pulled me into her own spotlight when they had a big retrospective gala for her at the DuSable Museum in I believe the year 2000, to tell the world that she believed in my work. So she expected me to do exactly what I have learned from her to do, which is to represent us as a cultural ambassador on the highest level, to use my work to elevate others in my community and to open doors so that those who are following in the next generation can benefit from who we are as a beautiful, creative, cultural group.
Professor Black, I just want to say in my opening statement to you as I introduce you, I have known you forever. When you were engaged in independent politics, when you were running around with a radical bunch, including Augustus Savage and some others that I'm sure that you will remember, Lemuel Bentley and Albert Janney and that bunch, Brenetta Howell, Bennett Johnson, you know those fellas, those guys. Well, when I met you, that is what you were engaged in. And then, of course, you were a teacher and a professor and then a college administrator and many, many, many other things. And of course, you have now written a book and may, in fact, write another book, who knows. But the whole point is that you have always been engaged, and you are so much like Dr. Margaret Burroughs in your reach that you just don't know what it is that you're not supposed to do, so you do it all. So now tell us about what you and Dr. Burroughs share.
Thank you, Gloria. You almost told it all. Yeah, I'm not going to take up a lot of time because each one of us here has a long story, and I'm going to be as brief as I can. It'll be difficult to be brief in talking about someone like Dr. Burroughs. Let me put it this way. In personification, Dr. Burroughs represents what Eisenhower said during World War II when we were losing the war in North Africa. And he said something like this: the impossible, we do that immediately. The miraculous sometimes takes a little longer. And she personified that because the impossible was something that she believed you could do immediately, and persuaded others who were in her presence, particularly young people as she was teaching, that there were no goals. They had to have goals, but they could achieve those goals because they had to have faith, they had to have creativity, they had to be tireless in their pursuit of those goals. I first met her, I guess I knew Dr. Burroughs about 70 years. I first met her during the Great Depression that some of you may have read about, 1929 to the beginning of World War II. It was during that period of time that we began to meet people, older, somewhat older people, like the Ishmael Flores, who was a little older, and the W.B. Du Bois, and Paul Robeson, and Langston Hughes. And we had a park out in the Washington Park that we had called the Washington Forum. And those men and women would inspire us youngsters to be fearless and also to outreach to help others. And sometimes during those days they didn't have no Social Security. There was no Medicare. There were none of those things that people take for granted today. And so when you're out of work, you just were out of work. And the person who ran for president in that period against Roosevelt made this comment about the Depression, that prosperity is right around the corner. Well, those of us like Dr. Burroughs and others, that Clarice Davis and later Durham, we kept looking around the corner, and all we could see were poor folks trying to get something to eat. So we were persuaded by these eloquent people, and when people get put out of their housing, the cry was, let's go put them back in. Well, we youngsters thought that was a good thing to do, so we'd run and put those people right back in because they had not been evicted because of their lack of desire, but lack of resources to do it. So Dr. Burroughs represented in that period of time in a very artistic kind of way, along with my childhood friend Charles White, who was a grammar school classmate of mine, and we represented the possible, that we could do it. And that illustration of that was when I came out of the Army, after we had suffered in the Army from a segregated Army with people that I met first, like Dr. Burroughs, Margaret I called her, and Clarice Durham. She is married now from Davis to Durham. And they were on the corners passing out leaflets saying, "We shall never have a segregated Army again." And at that period of time, promoted and with a leadership in what became the Progressive Party. And the Progressive Party demanded of Truman that you'd better stop that segregation when he was saying, "Oh, that has to be started in the states." He said, no, you're going to do it. Let me tell you how to do it. Pick up your pen in hand and write executive order. We did that in Philadelphia. Dr. Burroughs was there. Explorer was there, and many others that I could take time to. From that point on, of course, earlier we had become friends, but that point on we were what we might say soulmates or street mates or whatever description you want to give it. And then to cut the story a little short, I had the opportunity of teaching with her at DuSable High School. She was teaching art, but she was teaching art in a way that it took the history and the meaning of art into the form. And so we shared students, and they were enthusiastic from my class to go to her class. She made them enthusiastic to come to my class. And if we went on and talked about the students that we had in that day and the art factor that it played in her life, in their lives, I could name many people like a Ron Galt, the husband of Charlene Hunter Galt, a famous person known all over the world for her work in the field of journalism. Ron Galt, however, very successful as a representative of some of the biggest investment firms in the United States. And on and on and on I could go and name those kind of people. I'm just giving examples. Margaret Burroughs was a legend who was universal, embracing of all people, but focusing on the less fortunate, particularly people of African descent. But she went beyond that. She was using those people as an example as we tried to move forward of attempting to do and focusing on and accomplishing the impossible, and doing that, interpreting through her artwork, her poetry, and her universal activism, starting, however, in the area in which she was reared in her early years. I could go on and on, but I'll stop right there because I know our other.
Well, we knew you were gonna know more than all the rest of it. I guess I'll go to Reverend Helen Sinclair to see if she can see you and raise you one.
I don't know about
We're
that.
all DuSableites.
Yeah,
Well, I am too, so we're
Yeah.
all in good company
we
here.
love that school. Dr. Margaret Taylor Goss Burroughs, I don't know, we started running around together about the prison because she said she wanted my mother's legacy not to be lost, late Ma Houston. And my mother had put in so much starting at prison ministry at Breadbasket and Rainbow Push, and she wanted that to continue. So she started running around with me and calling me mama and asking me, what shall we eat, what shall we go? And a lot of times Dr. Burroughs and I would leave here going to some prison, and we would be so lost, we didn't know where we were, and it would be night, we'd be looking, had to go to a Holiday Inn, we didn't know which one we were supposed to be at, and we would be going from one to the other. She'd just sit there, and she said, "I'm with you. Can't help you, but I'm with you." That was really inspiring, because if I'd been by myself, it'd been a little worse, but we went everywhere. We have been driving on 55 when the truck drivers would blow at us. "What they blowing at us for?" They said, "Your tires are flat as they can be." And then we'd pull over, and then the truck drivers would get out, and then they would come and fix the tires for us. And sometimes we went in little villages where we thought they'd probably run us out. And the police would get down on the ground and fix our tires, And we just got into all kinds of things. We ran out of gas. We just, whatever it was to get to the prison, we did it. And she said the prison was what kept her living. And I know that's true, because whenever she was not able to get to the prison, she was calling everyone who was a part of the Jesse Meyer Houston Prison Ministry, said, are you going to Stateville today? Are you going to Menard today? And one of the things that people are not aware of, and the brothers were very, very unhappy when they first saw the newspaper clipping, they said, they probably don't want to put her name with ours, because how could they not talk about the 25 years she's spent in Stateville, Joliet, Menard, Dixon, Thompson, and all down.
Danville.
And we went to every prison during
As a
February.
volunteer.
In Black History, unless she was gone on a tour, we went and stayed away from home for the whole of February, down at Springfield, and then down to Southern Illinois. We would go to Vienna and Menard, and all those prisons. The people just looked to see Dr. Burroughs. I have one little thing here. It's a lot of, this one's kind of quick. Young brother wrote it the other day. Because Tuesday I had to go. I knew I didn't feel like it. I knew my children would have a fit me driving by myself, but I went on. So this young man gave me this. For every wrinkle on your face, there's a miracle. God has put your experience to work to bless others. You have smothered and nurtured me with your love that continues to give. You are the proverbial gifts that keep on giving. Your diligence and perseverance will live on through me. Mama, I'm so glad you are finally free. You taught me all I needed to survive in this cold, artistic world without speech. Act. Keep going. Just do it. Be humble and honor. I learned so much from you. To stand up straight, project your voice, and to be confident in the face of fear. I've shed many tears in your leaving, some sorrow, some joyful. It's crazy because I still hear your voice, smell your scent, and anticipate your running the class on Tuesday, where I will kiss you, hug you, and pay homage with a sincere heart. I will miss you dearly. It's been merely a few days and I still don't know what to say. Do those have questions of you, mentor, teacher, activist, revolutionary, friend, and caring mother? What didn't you do? I'm just glad I was able to give you tribute while you could hear the appreciation. My life's work and special performance will be a dedication to you. My prophecy is that at the height of my career, when I accept the most prestigious award, I will end with, this is for the woman who developed my craft and strengthened me to accomplish the vision that I have for success. Thank you to Dr. Margaret Burroughs. I loved you. I love you. I will love you forever and always. To Dr. Burroughs, 777 South Heaven, mansion number 93, from Reverend Anthony Spaulding Jr. Now, I have a 4-year-old little old grandson, and my daughter said she walked in the room the other day and he was crying his heart out, and she said, what's the matter? He said, I won't see Dr. Burroughs again. Dr. Burroughs is gone. I'll never see her again. We didn't really know that he knew that. But he didn't say Burroughs because we named her Dr. B. And he kept saying, a couple of times she said she's caught him crying and said, we'll never see Dr. B again. So that really hurt because we tried our best to see her so we could be with her, and hold her, but we couldn't do that.
Well, Dr. Burroughs was cited a week before she passed away in front of the DuSable Museum. And it's interesting because Dr. Burroughs could not have been in front of the DuSable Museum a week before her transition. But someone that I know very well assures me that she was there. So obviously we will see her.
Okay. When we got to Pontiac that day, when we went in the gate, that's the hour she died. I said, I knew she wanted to be with us on that
So
Sunday.
don't count Dr. Burroughs out at
Right.
all.
Right.
She is with us. She is in this room overseeing this program and overseeing all the things about it, because when I thought about the weather being so adverse, I asked myself, what would Dr. Burroughs do? And I knew
Yeah.
that she would press on. So we are all here despite whatever constraints we may have faced, because this is what Dr. Burroughs would do. Daniel Texador Parker, who is author of this awesome book, African Art and the Art in the Diaspora. I know that there's something in this book that you want to share with us, and in your reflection on Dr. Burroughs.
Well, yes. First of all, I'm just privileged that you asked me to come and to be a part of this great, great lady. I wrote the book, African Art, The Diaspora and Beyond. It's on my collection of art. And I just must tell the story. When I lived in the house where I started writing this book, I had a Kwanzaa celebration. I think Tim was there, and Dr. Burroughs was there. And I had just written the introduction to the book. And I felt very proud, you know, everybody was there at the party. And I said, Dr. Burroughs, I've written an introduction. Would you just read it over and give me some of your ideas? And she, I don't know where she had it, but she evidently carried a red pen with her wherever she went. And she went, and I felt I was in school again. I felt I was at DuSable again.
So she was a student. You were a student of hers?
Yes, I was a student of hers. And at that moment, I became a student again. And so she made some excellent suggestions and corrections. And that was Dr. Burroughs.
Yeah.
At a party, she decided she would edit my introduction. And I was then honored that she wrote a foreword for this book. She's in the foreword. In the book, I give some of my musings, and because the question when I would be interviewed always was, well, where did this interest of art begin? And I always credit two women, my mother and Dr. Burroughs. And I would just like to read a bit of what I wrote relative to Dr. Burroughs. My experience in high school helped to lay the foundation for my appreciation for the legacy of my ancestors and served as a channel for me to develop the love of African art forms. The vehicle for this revelation was my art teacher, Dr. Margaret Taylor Goss Burroughs. I heard she liked all of those names.
Oh,
yeah.
She wanted all of
That's
them.
right.
At DuSable High School in Chicago, Illinois, that's where I went, Dr. Burroughs instilled in us, her students, a strong sense of pride in our heritage and a vision of prosperity for our people. Dr. Burroughs was and continues to be much more than an educator. Although retired, she is still a messenger who massages the mind, stimulating whomever she touches to be inquisitive, to learn, and to grow. One had to have seen Dr. Burroughs to appreciate the power of this petite giant. In 1954, this art educator adopted an Afro hairstyle that intrigued the African American community, shocking scores while enhancing many others with her mystique. For some, she was an enigma, sporting an afro during the period of cultural history of the African American people when the standard for good hair was straight hair. In 1954, Dr. Burroughs was also prophetic, presenting a paradigm of what was to come. Most of us did not anticipate the movements of the 1960s and 1970s, which would affirm for us that black was indeed beautiful. Dr. Burroughs was 20 years ahead of her time. Though as a student I listened to Dr. Burroughs intently and she made me feel positive about myself, it would be many years before her vision actually penetrated my consciousness with any real degree of comprehension and appreciation. Dr. Burroughs' words always troubled me because I knew she was sending a message that I was not ready to receive. She tapped into my somewhat timid but fragile psyche and uncovered a powerful spirit and soul, more developed than my years. She, like my mother, planted the seeds that would later blossom into an honored tribute to my ancestors. Dr. Burroughs taught us to love our black skin, our kinky hair, our dark eyes, our fluent lips, and our broad noses. Although we were taking an art class with Dr. Burroughs, she taught us that we were, in fact, the most beautiful art form, and she did by example. As a result of my experiences with these two powerful women, my mother and Dr. Burroughs, as a young adult, my attention turned toward art, specifically the art of Africa, the art forms created by the first people.
Beautiful.
And
Thank you so much for
yes,
that.
yes. And as we go on in our discussion, I must talk about how Dr. Burroughs helped me, and she made me develop a art museum in my home, and I'll be happy to share that as we progress.
Well, fellow travelers, Eleanor Chatman and Dr. Jerome Lee, when Reverend Sinclair was talking about their sojourns up and down highways and with flat tires and all of that, she must have been a road runner because she was always on her way to somewhere.
Right.
Eleanor, how did you develop this relationship where you were just leading all of these tours? I know that that's your business, but how did you and Dr. Burroughs become partners in
I'll
that?
tell, this question has been asked of me before.
All right.
I can't tell you how, because you don't decide what to do with Dr. Burroughs. She decided what to do with me.
Okay.
So we met actually in the basement of her home before they moved to the location in the park. And evidently she took a liking to me, and she persuaded me some way in a very short time to get a lifetime membership in the museum, to purchase a chair in the museum, and eventually become a board member. I was a board member for 10 years. And while we were developing this friendship, I had been in travel. We began to develop a friendship, a personal friendship, a girlfriend type thing. We could go shopping together. Although I told some people yesterday, she really enjoyed going to Salvation Army shopping more than any place else.
And Goodwill,
Or Goodwill.
every Tuesday.
That's right. But what happened, once I opened my agency, she came in about 1980, and we were talking about the type tours I put together. I was putting together back then, and still to this day, of all the tours with a historical, cultural experience rather than sand, sun, and surf. And going to Africa, we could learn more of our people. And she also said this, you might appreciate it. You could develop your art skills better if you go to other cultures and incorporate those into your skills. So of course, every time you went somewhere, she said she was learning something different. And as the tours became more popular, we diversed to the African diaspora, which took us off the continent of Africa per se, and took us all over the world. So we started going to South America, Cuba, that's South Central America, South America, the Orient, Europe, and each place we went, we could find something of African heritage or African blood there to this day. So of course it's opened up the area all over the world. Wherever we could go and find something black. And during this time, we were looking, of course, originally for things of from the African diaspora, but you develop a respect for other people's society and their cultures. And this broadened us more and more. And I just discovered yesterday that she and I, over a period of 30 years, traveled more than 50 times together out of the United States. So you have to develop a friendship out of this, out of the United States. That's not the little Goodwill and Salvation Army type trips. This is just out of the United States, and we've been to most of the continents, North America, South America, Asia, Africa, Australia. That's all.
Caribbean.
Yes. So that's over 30 years, 50 is not too many. But after all this, what I learned from Dr. Burroughs more than anything else was the art of giving. Giving. If she taught me nothing else, she taught me how important it is to give. Give of yourself. Or just, she trained me so well that I would never go to her house without at least a bar of candy. And when I go, and I must apologize to Diane, I had her give a little piece of malachite to bring to her home for her today. And in this giving, it's just the law. You will receive many avenues, but you don't do it expecting something to receive. But it's just a part of you. And Dr. Burroughs would always say, cast your bread upon the water. So after everything the travels we had together, the personal experiences we had together, for instance, over 30 years, Dr. Burroughs spent every Christmas at my house with my family. Before Charles died, her husband, he would come to 4th of July, holidays. She was my girlfriend. She was my buddy. And the last time I saw her, I walked into where she was staying at the time. And she said, here's my best buddy, female. That's the highest honor I think I could have gotten. She sent me to represent her on different occasions. I've gone to schools to present for presentations. I accepted awards from her. And I can't think of a greater honor that one person could give another. Someone, Dr. Burroughs, saying I was her best friend. And I'm speechless to this day. But we will continue to do these. Dr. Burroughs used to say this. Every person should go to Africa. Not every black person, every person, because that's where it all started. And once you go there, you have appreciation for more people and all people all over earth as we know it. And so we're going to continue that, and we're going to be going back to Africa, and we're going to do the black diaspora, all in the name of Margaret Burroughs.
Well, I think it's wonderful, Eleanor, and I have to thank you again and again, because I had always wanted to travel to Africa and never was able to do it for various reasons. And of course I had a fear of flying. But when Dr. Burroughs invited me to go, I knew that if Dr. Burroughs was on that plane, it was going to stay in the air. And of course, you are the best of travel agents in terms of the way that you prepare. There was not one single glitch. You couldn't help it if the lights went out in the car because there was a strike.
I remember that.
But you took good care of us well, you can testify to it, Dr. Lee. Talk about your experience.
Amen. Dr. Burroughs was my best friend. She really was. I guess I first met her about 30 plus years ago through Ramon Price, the former chief curator at the DuSable Museum. And we became instant friends, the three of us, and after that, we went to Africa many times together and had wonderful experiences. They were pilgrimages and also vacations, just a wonderful time. I'd like to say some very personal things about Dr. Burroughs. We all know that she was a brilliant artist and poet and a beautiful person physically and had a beautiful spirit, but what a lot of people did not know about her was that she was one of the kindest human beings on earth. If she liked you, she would do anything, and that is anything for you. You could call Dr. Burroughs in the middle of the night at any time, and she would always be there. The best kind of friend that one can have on this earth is not only someone who wants to help you and says I would if I could, but one who can. And she had the desire to be helpful to people that she loved and also the ability to. She had lots of resources. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. She was the inventor of multitasking.
Yes.
We would go to sit at her skybox at the
Soldiers Field.
at Soldiers Field to watch the Bears, and she would watch the football game and write poetry at the same time,
Yes.
and draw paintings, draw pictures at the same time. She did wonderful things for all of us, and we absolutely love her. I said to Eleanor last week that we really never thought that she would leave us. It was just such a shock that she did have to go. But as Dr. P said, she's still with us. She's here with us right now, and she's enjoying what we're doing.
I want to read, go ahead.
I wanted to say something about the multitasking.
Okay.
I can remember sitting by the Indian Ocean in South Africa, around Durban, and everybody was playing and what have you. Dr. Burroughs was sketching. I can remember being in Cuba, and everyone was eating, going out, and Dr. Burroughs was writing a poem. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
On Cubans and black. So she was always doing something. If not that, she was talking with some children or giving out her art in schools all over the world. You could go all over this world, and every country that she visited, and she visited many, you're going to find some of her prints that she's given. Museums, schools, homes. So she was really the inventor of multitasking.
A lot of people couldn't understand her giving away prints, but she said she wanted even people who didn't have money to have art. And she just gives them away. She just gives them away, and she just kept giving them to everybody. And everywhere you would go, I took her to the clinic over here, 42nd at Greenwood, and her prints were all up there. She was so excited. I said, "There's your prints." But people couldn't understand that. But she knew what she wanted. And these brothers had been doing all the kinds of stuff that she taught them. Cartoons, ceramics, all kind of things in the prison that people would never even imagine that they would do.
And the amount of prison art, I don't think people were aware that she would teach her students art. They would do their projects, and she would bring them back and sell them to the public, and use those funds to buy more equipment, material for them to continue. She has had a large collection of prison art. It's excellent, and people are not aware. We're not aware of that.
Well, Dr. Burroughs told Debra Hand, who's with us here today, how to rest, because Debra would stay up night and day working on a project, and she didn't know how to, she would become fatigued and exhausted. She didn't know what to do. Dr. Burroughs told her to just switch to something else.
Yeah.
So when you run out of steam with your sculpture, then paint. Right. And when you run out of steam with that, then you do something else, then write. Mm-hmm. And so that was how she rested, by simply changing gears, by switching from one activity to another, not by going to bed and going, or taking a nap, but she rested by simply changing the activity. And I have something to read, but I will defer if you have something that you want to read, Deborah.
At the end, I can read at the end.
Well, I don't know how close to the end we're getting, but I just want to read something that Dr. Burroughs wrote, because everybody knows about what shall I tell my children who are black. In fact, they don't really know probably the original, because I read the original in her book, Life with Margaret, and it is much more detailed than the shorter version that most people recite when they recite this book. But Dr. Burroughs loved the inmates, and I know that they knew that she loved them from what you have read, Reverend Sinclair. And she wrote this for them. She said, "We, your women, stand behind you and bear you up. But black fathers, black brothers, black sons and lovers, you whom they ground down so long, you whom they have so maligned, whom they have maliciously lied about, upon whom their system has victimized and trampled upon, and then blamed your abject condition on you yourself. We, your mothers, wives, sisters, and lovers, want you to know that despite what they say, we, your women, stand behind you and bear you up. We know why they persist in denying your manhood to you, to us, and to the world. We know how and what you are and have been, and what you are capable of becoming. In your veins flows the blood of courageous blacks who fought to the death against the enslavers, who refused to submit and had to be broken. You are akin to Sinclair of the Amistad, to Denmark Vesey of Charleston, to Shields Green, who was with John Brown, and Garnet, Garvey, Dubois, and Robeson. You are the one they burned the house down to get, but you took a lot of them with you. You are a little Emmett and a young Jim Chaney, and a host of young black people who are intent on having freedom and equality and enjoying the fruit of their labor. A long line of you has been fighting and dying and being born again and again as black fathers, black brothers and sons and lovers, to fight and fight and fight again until full freedom and dignity is attained for you and for us, your mothers, wives, sisters, and lovers, and all who stand behind you and bear you up." Now this is about as powerful a tribute to black manhood as you will find anywhere. And I just wanted to share that, and I want to share this book because this is her own words, and it is a delightful reading. Now I will defer to Debra Hand, who seems to have something that she wants to share.
Okay, I wrote a tribute to Dr. Burroughs because she just changed my life in so many ways. But I must say that she literally took me from crayons to the Smithsonian just by sheer determination and by the things she gave me and myself. So I know that my legacy has to be that I take whatever it is, whatever attention I get, or whatever doors I can open with my name, that I use that to help the generation coming behind me, or the ones that are here that are younger than me, to help them understand the greatness that they have within them, and that they can, as Dr. Burroughs so often said, cast down your buckets where you are, or sit down your buckets where you are, meaning that start where you are. We are such a powerful, powerful people, and young men know that wearing your pants around your ankles and your hats on sideways is not a rite of passage for you. That you have a cultural group, you come from greatness, and there's a greater reference point for who you are in the world, and you have to find what's in you, and it's my responsibility and the other people in your cultural group to make sure that you know what your value is. But here's just a little tribute that I wrote to Dr. Burroughs. I'll read some of it. And it says, "People always ask me where my career in the arts began. The answer is plain and simple: standing on the shoulders of the great Dr. Margaret Burroughs. Dr. Margaret Burroughs was my art mother. She literally gave birth to me as an artist. She was the one who discovered my work and the one who personally escorted me into the fine arts world. She arranged for my very first public exhibit and was the first person to walk through the door when the show opened. She commissioned my first museum acquisition and arranged for my very first public unveiling and presentation. She introduced me to curators, collectors, gallerists, and art patrons. So often she stood with me like a proud stage mother, introducing me as her daughter as she pulled me into her own spotlight. In the year 2000, during one of her proudest moments in the arts, during her Lifetime in the Arts retrospective, she brought me on stage to let the world know she believed in my work." This really goes on to talk about a little bit about the day that I heard that she passed away. But I want to say that she nurtured my talent, encouraged my confidence, mentored me, and watched proudly as my work evolved from obscurity to prominence. She was my hero, my comrade, my friend, my mentor. She sculpted me into a sculptor and sent me off into the fine arts world as one of her many, many ambassadors of our proud cultural heritage. I am so grateful to have known Dr. Burroughs personally. I'm so grateful to have heard the stories from her own mouth about how and why she built these great institutions for us. I'm so grateful for having the honor of having her hold my hand and usher me into the fine art world, a world that most African Americans could not have dreamed of succeeding in just one generation before, but that I could now proudly inhabit because of her lifetime of trailblazing. I am so grateful for her gifts of cultural pride to our community, grateful for the light she shined on our beauty for the world to behold, grateful for the artifacts she preserved, for the knowledge she transcribed for us, grateful for being born in a city, being born and raised in a city where she created her legacy, grateful for her influence on my mother, who had been her student as a young woman, and which led to me having known her. A couple of weeks ago, during my last private visit with Dr. Burroughs, thanks to Dan Parker and Diane Carr, I got a chance to have one more hug. I got a chance to tell her I loved her one more time. I got a chance to hear her say she was proud of me. And as best I could, I got a chance to thank her one last time. But how do you thank someone who has taken you from crayons to the Smithsonian? I know, as I have always known, that I must spend my life trying. I know how much I owe, how much African Americans at large owe to her legacy. When we had no status in this society, she gave us a place to be somebody. She gave Chicago and the world the first museum devoted to showcasing and preserving African American culture. She gave us art and artifacts, art galleries and institutions, poetry and books, and knowledge of our great heritage. She gave us reference points for who we have been and who we can be in the world. She provided a blueprint for so many Chicagoans who went out into the world and realized greatness. So many artists, writers, business leaders, and politicians. There's a reason why the first African American president in the history of the world could find his political launching pad in the city of Chicago. It is the city where Dr. Burroughs' legacy is most alive and at work. So thank you, Dr. Burroughs. Thank you for your life. Thank you for the way you touched and changed my own. And on that final day, as you rejoined the ancestors, thank you. Thank you for reminding me that it is not possible for me to lose you, for in part, I am of you and will always stand within your legacy. We love you too.
You know, I was thinking while she was speaking that now I understood something about all of you. And it started with my realization, sudden realization, that I had not understood Dan Parker. Because Dan Parker and I were colleagues in the junior colleges. And aside from wearing the gross national product on his back, I didn't know what else Dan Parker was, could do or would do. And then he turned up having this great collection, this art collection. It just dawned on me. It was the Margaret Burroughs factor. That was the missing part. That was what made Dan Parker something other than my colleague in fashion play. I trusted Eleanor Chatman, even though I didn't know her, to fly on an airplane and go to the other side of the world. It was the Margaret Burroughs factor. Dr. Lee became our family ophthalmologist because he was on that trip. It was the Margaret Burroughs factor. The moment I met Reverend Helen Sinclair, when you find somebody who is competent, who is kind, who is accomplished, and who is lacking in ego, who is not trying to be boastful and show off, but who is just in the world doing major stuff, you better know if they in Chicago, it's the Margaret Burroughs factor. So that's what we all have in common here, whatever greatness we all share.
Well, I know he said that she told him to do a museum. She told me to take them couches out because I have a whole Dr. Burroughs wall, then I have an elephant wall, 2,000 or 3,000 elephants, and I have owls and all other kind of stuff. And everybody comes to my house and says, "This a museum?" I said, "Okay, Dr. B. I guess I have to do what you told me."
Well, we got to do what the technician is telling us now. We have to Wrap it up.
All right.
But I'm so happy, Reverend Helen Sinclair,
Thank you kindly.
Dr. Jerome Lee Jr.,
Thank you.
Eleanor Chatman, Daniel Texador Parker, and Debra Hand, that we have shared these moments here together. And I know this won't be the last time. And I know that it's the Margaret Burroughs factor that will keep us doing what we do, and I hope that we'll do it together.
I have an interview of her on www.probationchallenge.org. People say it looks like me and two girlfriends kicking it.
Oh,
Very good. So you ought to try to get that.
okay.